Charles Laughton made one movie, and it's a masterpiece. There are a few potential reasons for this, which I'll get into later, but based on how good that movie turned out to be, it's a tragedy we never got to see anything else from the man. First and foremost, Laughton was an actor. Born at the turn of the century, he was brought up in England to carry on his family's hotel business, which he abandoned to pursue the dramatic arts. It didn't take long for audiences to recognize his talent on stage. Although he may not look the part of a leading man, his captivating ability of bringing real depth to his characters made him an international star. Pretty soon, he was in pictures. In 1934, he won an Oscar for his role as Henry VIII and used his physicality to great effect in The Hunchback of Notre. Not unlike Peter Lorre and other great character actors of the time, Laughton often played the most interesting, scene-chewing role in whatever film he was in. His success continued into the 50s, where he dove back to his theatrical roots, both as an actor and as a director. After directing a few Broadway plays, he was itching to try his hand as a filmmaker. He spent some time looking for the right material when he came across Davis Grubb's thriller novel, The Night of the Hunter. Laughton was immediately excited by the book and set out to make it his next project. With producer Paul Gregory by his side, whom he'd worked with on some of his theater shows, and renowned filmed author James Agee attached as screenwriter, Laughton began assembling a team of talents, each one an artist in their own right. Sure enough, what we got was a work of art. Set in a southern town during the Depression, the story follows two children, John and Pearl Harper, as they try to escape the clutches of a supposed preacher, Harry Powell.
Hold Miss Jenny still. Stand still, Miss Jenny.
Before their father is caught and sentenced to death for robbing a bank and killing two men in the process, he entrusts his son to hide the money and makes him promise never to tell anyone where it is.
Listen to me, John. This money here, we gotta hide it before they get to me. There's close to $10,000. Where?
None here.
Powell, who winds up in the same jail cell as Harper for petty car theft, catches wind of this.
Where? And a little child shall lead them.
Now, come on, boy. Tell me.
He sets out to find the dead man's family and the $10,000 hidden somewhere in their grasp.
Lord,
So begins the nightmare.
you sure knowed what you was doing when you put me in this very cell at this very time. A man with $10,000 hid somewhere, and a widow in the making.
The premise may sound like any other traditional noir, but the movie plays out more like a fairy tale. Laughton himself called it a nightmarish Mother Goose story. The film opens like a dream, with a woman's face fading into a starry night sky, warning a group of children to beware the wolf in sheep's clothing. Immediately, there's a narrative quality to the storytelling. We are about to be shown a cautionary tale universal enough to apply to our own lives. The film is no longer just about John and Pearl, but about all the young children of the world. And just like every other children's tale, the film is building to a simple life lesson or truth. Here we see a dark reality about small-town America told through the guise of an expressionist fable. Powell, who calls himself a preacher, is basically evil incarnate.
Lord, I am tired. Sometimes I wonder if you really understand. Not that you mind the killings. Your book is full of killings.
He believes he's doing the Lord's work by traveling from town to town, killing women who, in his words, are
Lacy things, things with curly hair.
We see he's not just driven by money, but by some self-righteous calling to eliminate all sexual immorality. Pretty heavy stuff for a fairy tale. Then again, it's not like the original Brothers Grimm stories were much cheerier. For the 50s, though, Night of the Hunter was in deep water. Other films were huge period epics or lighthearted musicals or stuffy melodramas. This was a movie that wasn't afraid to deal with issues of sexual repression and religious hysteria, of good and evil. Like Blue Velvet, it stood outside of its contemporaries as a shockingly invasive look at the quiet suburbs of your average hometown. Many have called it one of the scariest movies of all time, although I don't think they mean scary in the traditional sense. It does have its share of haunting imagery, plenty of it, but what's even more terrifying is the implication behind the imagery. Even if you're watching this as an adult, the movie takes you back to being a kid and not being able to wake up from a bad dream. It grips you tight and never lets go. The sequence that best demonstrates this is after the children have run away from home and managed to escape on a skiff. Powell is inevitable. His presence is constantly looming like a shadow, always barely out of reach. No matter how hard they try, John and Pearl can't seem to lose him, just like trying to run in a dream.
Don't never sleep.
I wish I'd seen this movie as a kid. As much as I love it now, I think its power would have been even stronger if I was John's age. There are a few films that had a real effect on me when I was younger. Nightmare Before Christmas, Marcelino Panivino, Oliver Twist, and I'm positive this one would have done the same. Hey, if you got kids, your next movie night, I recommend swapping this guy with your 13th viewing of Shrek. Not that there's anything wrong with Shrek. Shrek's solid, but 13 times, come on. For Laughton's first attempt as a filmmaker, the movie is astonishingly beautiful. Stanley Cortez, the cinematographer who'd worked with Orson Welles on The Magnificent Ambersons and would later partner with Sam Fuller on Shock Corridor and The Naked Kiss, did not hold back. He brought an incredible eye for light and shadow to Laughton's vision. The movie would simply not look the way it does without him. Before the shoot, Cortez would visit Laughton at his home and the two would talk about ideas for the film. The director knew nothing about lenses or camera height, so it was up to his DP to educate him. What's amazing to me is how much Laughton trusted Cortez. It's a similar story to Citizen Kane. Orson, having never made a movie, let Greg Toland take full control of the technical side of production. The results speak for themselves. The movie has some of the best black and white photography I've seen. Cortez shot some sequences on Kodak Tri-X, a film stock that heightened the contrast of the scene, allowing dark areas to really dip to black and light areas to stand out.
And it's still here amongst us, tainting us.
It's not just beauty for beauty's sake either. The lighting tells a story.
You must have known about it all along, Harry. But that ain't...
Look to how Shelley Winter's face is lit here. This moment, which comes before her murder, casts an angelic glow on her, like she's already died and gone to heaven.
He made you marry me, so you could show me the way and the life, and the salvation of my soul.
Other moments are visual allegories for the film's interest in good and evil. Later we meet Miss Cooper, played by silent film star Lillian Gish, whose home is an oasis for the two children. See how Gish is in silhouette while Robert Mitchum's face is bathed in light. You'd expect it to be the opposite, considering Mitchum is the devil to Gish's guardian angel, but Laughton doesn't play into standard tropes. He paints his frame as he wishes and lets the viewer come to whatever conclusion they desire. The framing of the shots is as equally masterful as the lighting. Every dramatic beat is staged for maximum visual impact, whether it's Powell literally overshadowing little John or the children playing in the background as their mother chats to a neighbor in the foreground. There is not a single wasted opportunity to convey story via images.
John don't like him much. Pearl dotes on him.
One interesting thing Laughton does is this proscenium-like shot. It happens a few times in the movie, usually at crucial moments where little to no dialogue is spoken, and it's a hauntingly poetic way of placing us outside the action, looking in. They're like these Brechtian tableaus that momentarily distance us from the characters while simultaneously drawing us deeper into this fabricated world.
Children. Children. Children.
Design plays an important hand in heightening this emotion too. Aside from the exteriors, most of the film was shot in studios, where each element could be carefully mapped out and controlled. Even the river was shot in a soundstage. They used a technique called optical printing to achieve things like distant large-scale boats or the sky. Essentially, two different slates were shot, then overlaid onto one reel. The children drifted in their boat in a big water tank, while little electric lights emulated the stars. The effect feels both realistic and manufactured. just like everything else in the film. Some elements don't even make physical sense. These neon signs, for example, what are they corresponding to? They're sort of placed haphazardly without any real purpose or function, but Laughton does this intentionally. He wanted to capture the way children see the world, fractured and specific. Details like the size of a room become abstracted in our memories. Reality is always just a little off. Such great storytelling, so simple yet so powerful. An interesting fact is that Laughton had the composer, Walter Schumann, come on set to see how Cortez was lighting scenes to get a feel for the atmosphere that they were creating. This is how Schumann came up with the southern waltz-like tempo that creeps in and out of the picture. That's teamwork for you. Of course, you can't talk about this movie without talking about Robert Mitchum.
Ah, little lad, you're staring at my fingers. Would you like me to tell you the little story of right hand, left hand? The story of good and evil? H-A-T-E. It was with this left hand that old brother Cain struck the blow that laid his brother low. L-O-V-E. You see these fingers, dear hearts? These fingers has veins that run straight to the soul of man. The right hand, friends, the hand of love. Now watch and I'll show you the story of life. These fingers, dear hearts, is always a warring and a tugging, one again to other. Now watch 'em. Old brother left hand hates a fighting, and it looks like love's a goner. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hot dog loves a winning. Yes, sirree. It's love that won. And old left-hand hate is down for the count.
I never heard it better told.
Everything about his performance, from his eyes to his voice to his hands, is perfect. Like Laughton, Mitchum was one of the great character actors of his time. He had this fearless quality as an actor that separated him from other movie stars, which was his ability to tackle unflattering roles with as much care and preparation as any other. It's not so much what he says in that love-hate speech that makes it so good, but how he says it. He delivers it like it's a sermon he's recounted dozens of times, which his character probably has. With all that charm and good nature, we can still see the snake ready to lunge at any moment. Although the adults are fooled by his facade, the children can see right through it.
And share our fortunes together, John.
You think you can make me tell, but I won't.
Billy Chapin, who plays the boy John, does a great job of standing up to Powell even when he's terrified of him.
We're not keeping secrets from each other, are we, little lad?
Takes you back to the fear of getting caught lying to your parents. The way the father-son dynamic ends up playing out actually surprised me when I first saw it. It's a powerful moment that I won't spoil here, but when the burden of the money becomes too much to bear, we see just how damaged and alone these kids really are.
And he slew 2 human beings.
In a fairy tale story like this, it makes sense that the characters feel archetypal. Powell's the big bad wolf, the boy and the girl are Hansel and Gretel, the mother, played terrifically by Shelley Winters, is the neurotic widow, and even the townspeople have a mob-like mentality to them. We see this clearly at the end when Powell is caught and what were once overly sweet listeners of his word turn on him in a violent rage. In a way, evil does manage to corrupt good.
Won't you look yonder and tell the court if that is the man that killed your mother?
All of this stems from Laughton. As a performer, he knew how to pull the performances he wanted. Before production, he spent a lot of time studying silent films and directed in a similar style, leaving the film reel to roll as he fed line readings to the actors off camera. It makes sense that a movie directed by an actor would be well acted, but when every other element is as tight and well crafted, you know you're not just dealing with a wannabe filmmaker. Somehow, Laughton pulled it off. I just spent over 14 minutes talking about how great this movie is, but as is often the case with great movies, that's not how people saw it at the time. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Some were confused by the film's tone and murky characterization of good and evil. Others felt it lost the book's dread-inducing atmosphere and fell into melodrama. Audiences didn't help perception much either. The movie flopped, critically and commercially. This took a heavy toll on Laughton. He was fighting the early stages of kidney cancer, and he took the film's failure personally, accelerating his condition. He'd go on to act in a few more movies before his death 7 years later, including a part in Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus, but he never recovered enough from the blow to direct again. Gradually, the film gained a following in museum retrospectives and art house screenings, and eventually became hailed as a great work. Laughton never lived to see the film get the recognition it deserves, but thankfully for us, it has.
A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit. Neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. Let's start again. Got plenty of film on the camera?
Yes. How much, Charlie?
All right. All right. Keep going.
Now, let's be quiet. We're rolling.